Today we have a crazy entitled parent story of a mom that owes their kid thousands of dollars and laughed in their face when asked to pay it back. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, a stranger asked me to teach her 6-year-old how to swim when I'm not a swimming instructor. So I originally posted the story in Am I the Jerk, but people told me to post it on this sub, so here it goes. I often go to the pool once or twice a week to stay in shape and to relax. I went there Saturday evening. The pool I go to has 2 different pools. A fun one with slides and bubbles and things like that, mainly for children or people who just want to relax, and a real one where people swim in lanes. In the real one, there are 2 sides, one for experienced swimmers that is pretty deep, around 3 to 4 meters, and one for people who are learning that is pretty shallow. It is a well-known rule that people who can't really swim well can't go in the deep part, and you can't stop or play in there. It's meant for serious swimming. I was swimming in the deep part, and while I was doing backstroke, I feel my hand hit something. I turned around and saw a young kid that was 6 or 7. I told him that he shouldn't be there because people were going pretty fast and he could get hurt by other swimmers. While I was talking to him, I noticed that he wasn't swimming very well. He was doing weird movements and barely keeping his head above the water, so I got out of the pool with him and looked for his mom. At this pool, parents that accompany children but don't swim can get inside without paying and just sit around the pool, which is what the mom did. We find her looking at her phone, and I tell her that it was pretty dangerous for her child to be in the deep end of the pool when he didn't know how to swim well and could get hit by swimmers. She looks up, clearly annoyed, and tells me, "It's okay, he's just a kid." I told her that I wasn't upset at him, I was just concerned for his safety. She told me that if I was really concerned for his safety, I would have taught him how to swim instead of making him get out, and that it would be safer for him if I taught him. I told her that wasn't my role, but she started saying that it wasn't nice of him and that I should help a child when I saw that he was in distress. I told her that I wouldn't because 1, I'm not qualified to teach children, 2, it's a huge liability and I don't want to be responsible for the boy's life, 3, I don't get paid to do this, and 4, I'm here to relax. She started telling me that I was selfish for not sharing my skills, that I swam well enough to teach children, that she wasn't asking for a lot of my time, that I should be happy to help other people, etc. I said no again, and she looked at me and said, "I can't believe this," while shaking her head. Well, I can't believe this either. She was very entitled and endangering her child. Honestly, this is the person you just accept that you can't win this argument and just walk away from. And probably most importantly, making it clear to them, I'm not going to be watching your kid, lady. I mean, in that situation, who is going to stick their neck out and take on that liability? Opie's absolutely right. You want to pay me? Then maybe I'll take on that liability. Urban Yeti Zero commented, "Irony is lost on idiots. I'd mention it to the people who are being paid, lifeguards, staff, etc., because this parent will likely do this to other people and will try to blame folks if something happens to their sprog." OP responded saying, "Yep, she was already pretty upset that I made him get out of the pool, so I'd assume she gets upset at anyone that says anything to her child, yet she doesn't want to look after him." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of entitled parents, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, my mom admitted that she didn't care. I got into an argument with my mom last week. To state simply, I wanted to book an appointment and asked her to help me. The way she worded her reply could have been taken 2 ways, so it was a miscommunication error. I was aware of it, but my mom made it a huge deal. I misunderstood that she was going to book an appointment for tomorrow, but she really meant that she was going to book an appointment tomorrow for another day. When she found out that I told my friend that I had a possible last-minute appointment, she was screaming at me, calling me stupid for not understanding what she was thinking about. Of course, I was very much aware of how stupid this argument was. I tried to tell her that it was all just a misunderstanding and we should just forget it, in which she continued shouting for the next 2 hours, 90% of it calling me dumb or stupid. 2 days later, we had the same argument. She was screaming at me, trying to get me to understand her point of view. Me thinking that if I listened to her point of view, then she'd listen to mine. I didn't argue back and listened. When it was finally my turn to speak, she was being petty and told me that she didn't want to hear whatever I had to say because whatever I was gonna say is useless. Whenever I told her that she was being unfair and that I deserved a chance to speak, she only kept screaming louder and louder, even grabbing a hanger, those clothes hangers, and hit me with it. It broke in half in just one hit. Whenever I kept trying to get her to listen, she would repeat the same things. I don't want to listen, I don't care, your words are stupid. I haven't cried hard in a few years. That day was the first time I cried hard and in front of my own mother. When I tried to tell her that I just wanted her to listen, she only kept talking over me, ending the conversation briefly with an "I don't want to talk to her anymore," like a child would. But even so, while I was trying to hide in my room, she just barged in and began crap talking me to my other relatives in my face in another language. Sometimes yelling at me while doing so, even though she said that she didn't want to talk to me. When you get treated like this by somebody, is it really fair to even say, "Oh, this is my mother"? Maybe on a birth certificate, but after that, if you could never associate with somebody like that again, wouldn't you take that opportunity? Excellent at 1132 commented, "Tell mom to remember this moment. When she asks why, let her know that this is the moment you will remember when it's time to put her in a rest home and never see or speak to her again. Also, let her know that Shady Pines would be a palace compared to the dump you're stuffing her into." Our next story is, "Dad wants to move up here and I do not want it." I posted a couple days ago, pretty sure it was here, about my dad who basically last minute told me he couldn't help me next week when I give birth. Today I had a conversation with him just talking. I don't like confrontation and I just want to keep the peace. So when we talked, I was basically just, "Yes, sounds fun, sounds bad, sure," the conversation until he brought up about wanting to help me. The version of wanting to help is quitting his job. He is notorious for staying at a job for 3 to 4 months and then quitting when he doesn't get his way, and move up here to stay with me, my husband, toddler, and newborn to help us. He wants me to quit my job. I love my job. They've let me go remote until I can get daycare for the newborn, and it's not a very demanding job at all. So I can focus on my school. I just graduated my associate, summa cum laude, and I'm on track to do the same with my bachelor's and focus on the babies. On paper, that sounds great, but I know my dad. He did this with my firstborn. He moved in with us, asked us what kind of help we wanted. I told him I just needed someone to babysit. I didn't want him paying any bills, and this was agreed upon. But instead, decided to get a job overnights and not babysit at all, refused to clean, refused to help out with anything other than monetary stuff. Crap hit the fan when me and my husband decided to break our lease, and he had to figure out where to go because he couldn't follow us to New York at the time. Thankfully. Now he's discussing with the rest of my family how he's going to move up here, start a landscaping business, and help again without even asking me. Just assumes I'm going to agree. And when I brought up I don't have room for him, nor will my landlord agree to him moving in, he just goes, "It'll be fine. If you get kicked out, we'll find something else. Just talk to your husband." I know my husband will not agree to this because of the last time. He's already expressed how much he hates my father and will not stand for him to move in with us. And every time my father visits, my husband's on edge because he thinks my father will decide to just not leave one day, which is a possibility, unfortunately. I'm at the point I need to go very low contact because my father doesn't understand boundaries. I just need to actually do it. I mean, I guess my question is, what is stopping OP from just saying no? Like, is he going to be very aggressive and yell? Is he just gonna show up anyway? I guess maybe this is more of just like a venting kind of thing. Either way, I think it's pretty clear the answer is to just straight up say, no thanks. Fried Clams commented, "I would just say no, that didn't work for me last time, so we aren't going to consider it again." Or maybe less confrontational. "I don't think we could make that work. We don't have enough room." Or just be vague. But use the word no. Have strength. Geek commented, "I think you're right. Explaining this again will just leave Dad with the impression that it's a debate. He needs to understand the decision is OP's, and this isn't a time to stress her with this. Even if OP hasn't made up her mind, I wouldn't discuss reasons as it just encourages him to keep picking at it. His argument is that it's fine to get OP, her husband, and her children evicted. His point of view does not need to be entertained." Our next story is, "My parents are stalking me because God told them." Hi, I'm a 24-year-old female and I live on my own out of my parents' house. I have a bit of a situationship going on with my friend. We'll call him David, 24-year-old male. We had a fling a few months ago, and now it's kinda happening again. It started out just hanging out and enjoying David's company, then it slowly turned into more again. The thing is, my parents knew about the first fling. David used to be inseparable from my dad. They were like father and son in a way, until David and I had our fling. Now, my dad is trying to control him, telling him he is to have no contact with me outside of a group chat we're all in. We think this is stupid. A few weeks ago, we were hanging out and we went to Five Below to get snacks and just hang out. While we were there, my parents walked in. They don't live in the same city as me. I live about 20 minutes away from them, and they just randomly showed up at the store right by my house. They claimed it was to find batteries. At that point, my dad confronted David and said that he told him not to be around me, and he told me he isn't gonna care anymore and not to go crying to him when I get heartbroken. My mom texted me later saying it was totally the Holy Spirit revealing that something was happening so they can intervene. I'm kind of glad that happened because after David and I left, that opened up a conversation about what's going on between us. We both enjoy our company and we both have feelings for each other, but we are taking it slow. While we were talking, my dad is texting me 3-page essays on why I'm stupid for not doing as he says and that he's no longer invested. He told me David only wants me for one thing and doesn't care about me as much as he does, and that if David is in love with me, he'd ask him for permission to date his daughter and play by his rules. David told me he does really care about me and that it's a lie that he doesn't. Anyways, we decided to continue hanging out, especially since my dad said he no longer cares. We both have annual passes to Disneyland, so we decided to go together after work. While we were there, my mom and dad texted me asking if I was at Disneyland. I ignored their texts. We were there till closing, and as we were walking out, my dad walked up to us with a Starbucks bag and asked to talk. David kept walking and said no, and of course, me wanting to keep the peace, begged David to, and he said no. I told him I'm his ride, and he said he'd just get an Uber, and I told him no, so I just left my parents there and left. I cried in the car, and David told me it's not my fault. While I was in the car, I texted my mom how she knew I was there, and she said, "God is watching." And I asked again how she knew, and she said she'd meet me at my house and tell me, and I said, "No, you will not meet me at my house. That's weird, Mom. How do you know I was at Disneyland?" She stopped messaging me, and then my dad messaged me this. "OP, if you want to know how we knew you were there, you can talk to us in person. We brought peace and we tried to be loving even though I knew David was doing stuff that he said he wouldn't do. I just want him to care for you as much as I do and your mother does, but you're gonna find out, honey, and it's really sad. He had every opportunity right there to confess his love for you and to ask us for space. We could have had a good discussion, but instead, he was a coward and ran away. From here on out, you are not to come to my home. We can meet in public to talk about how we knew you were at Disneyland because we had every intention of telling you, and that was gonna be a part of the conversation. I've never lied to you and I never will. I do not have anything to hide. That conversation could have been great and we're still willing to have it, but David sadly is not. I did nothing to him to deserve the treatment that we got from him, and I've never treated him any other way than I would treat a good son. I hope and I pray that he doesn't do what I know he's going to do. Wolves come into the sheep and they separate the sheep from the flock, and then they devour the sheep. But the good shepherd will protect you, and if David ever was a sheep, he will listen to the voice of God, the people that loved him and cherished him. I love you, OP, and I wish nothing but the best for you. If you want to talk, we are willing to talk to you about anything you want to know." I responded with, "Dad, I don't expect him to be in love with me. That's way too soon. And if you don't want to hide the truth, just explain how you knew I was there. I will not be meeting in person for a conversation that can be had over text." He then responded with, "Then don't meet with me. That's how it's gonna come out because you need to see my demeanor and everything, and shame on you guys for trying to point the finger back at us. You guys are the ones that are not doing right and hiding. Literally every box that was checked for you to like David was erased by David. All the things that you liked about him are now gone, and it was by David's own hand. OP, from now on, do whatever you want. I'm cutting this pain off. I mean it. Don't come by my house because we will not be able to support your drama any longer. you're gonna have to learn the hard way again. The only difference is, now your mother and I are numb and we don't feel anything. God will show the truth, but I wanted to make sure you weren't hurt in the process. I don't care if I don't meet with them or not. I can't handle the helicopter parenting anymore, and I feel that anytime I've ever brought a boy around, my dad has to place himself in the middle, forcing the guy out. The guys that have been okay with it in the past end up not working out because of my fear that if my dad can control him, now my whole future will still be controlled by him. If I don't do it their way, then I'm doing wrong. I really like David and he likes me. I'm 24 years old and for once, I have a guy that doesn't run away from me because of my crazily super involved parents. I don't know what to do. What I'm concerned about is how my parents followed me there and why. I just don't know what to do. Any advice is greatly appreciated. Thank you for reading as much as you did, and please, any suggestions would help because I feel alone right now. Edit, thank you everyone who gave advice and suggestions. I decided I'm going to let myself settle for a few days. I'm going to agree to hear my parents out just to know how they got my location. As controlling as they are, I still love them and I can say with certainty they've always been honest. My dad said he will tell me how they found out I was there in person. I'm going to give myself a few days to get my own nerves and emotions down. I'll post an update when that happens. Honestly, thank you everyone. It's nice to see that I'm not crazy and that I'm not a terrible person. It's reassuring to see that this isn't normal behavior, and I can't thank you all enough for that. It gave me a bit of a peace of mind, to be honest. Thank you all for giving advice to a no-name person on Reddit. Edit 2. I texted my dad and told him I'd be willing to talk within the next few days. He then told me I need to find a new phone provider. This is the last bill I have connected with my folks. They pay for it in their account, I just pay them back for my line every month. I think that cancels out them tracking me via phone provider, especially now since this is another attempt to control by using fear of cutting off a service I can very easily get on my own. I looked for any AirTags, I couldn't find anything. He still refuses to tell me how he tracked me unless I meet with him, my mother, and our pastor at our church. Update, I met with them today. My pastor and his wife had my back 100%. My dad told me how they found me. I guess I was still sharing my location with him on my phone through messages. He said God revealed that he still had my location. My parents then drove to my house to see if my car was there. Saw David's car there, we carpooled to Disney, then waited outside of Disneyland till we left. I told them that's freaking weird and that makes me uncomfortable. They said they did it out of love because they were concerned. Basically, my pastor and his wife are 100% behind my back regarding dating who I want, not letting my parents decide. I should have the opportunity to decide if I like the guy first, one-on-one, and then bring him to meet my parents. It's a little different because we all have known David for years, but I still have the right to decide when my parents will be involved. My dad did not like this. He said he would leave the church and then blocked me on all of his social medias. He said he can't stand around and wait for my heart to get broken, and the whole time he was trashing on David. He called me a few names that were extremely hurtful, and I was glad to see the pastor had my back. They told me I am no longer under his roof. I'm not doing anything wrong. The conversation ended with my dad claiming he wants to go no contact, which I'm sure he won't follow through on. It sucks. I love my parents, but in my dad's eyes, if he can't have control over this aspect, I don't get him at all. And that's probably how it's going to be for a while. Thank you guys. I was definitely trying to run through the whole gamut of things that it could possibly be. I was thinking like, did they secretly install like 360 on OP's phone without them knowing? By the way, if anybody else out there is worried about AirTags being on or around them in their car or something, Apple does provide apps even for Android where you can go and scan for local AirTags and it'll tell you if one's nearby. BooBoo773 commented, check your car for a tracking device. If they have keys to your place, change the locks. There is something very wrong with them. This level of stalking and harassment is concerning. Adding into the religious aspect of it, they sound unhinged. OP responded saying, this all happened last night, so I'm going to be spending the day looking for anything like that. They don't have any keys to my place, thankfully. Our next story is, supposed vacation becomes a road trip with in-laws. My husband, male 29, and I, female 26, have been living with my husband's parents because my mother-in-law, female 64, had a stroke in late 2022. We moved in with them in early 2023. There is a lot of history between us, and they've always been unfair to my husband and his brother, male 26. So his little brother, we'll call him R, got married a few days ago and the whole thing has been a bit of a nightmare and I have no friends, so I have to tell someone. Some minor details are changed in case mother-in-law sees this post. For start, a week ago, the Sunday before the trip, they tried to buy plane tickets for 4 of us, then realized that the company they have points on would be too expensive. We have known about this wedding for months. They alluded to always having the tickets, and all of a sudden, we find out there are no tickets. We offered to even buy our own on a different, cheaper airline, and they said, "No, let's save money." That made an hour flight into a 9-hour drive. While taking care of mother-in-law when she first got sick, I had a fall and broke my leg. Father-in-law accused me of faking until we got the x-ray back, so a 9-hour drive isn't something I can do without being in a lot of pain. But I sucked it up and did the road trip with them. 9 hours of silence and father-in-law listening to classical. On this trip they have harassed service workers, forced us to take many hugs. Like force. Mother-in-law cannot keep her hands to herself. Mother-in-law keeps stealing other people's food without asking. They left their phones in the room on purpose and made us do anything that they needed a phone for. They needed a bunch of maps and mother-in-law kept wanting to Google dumb questions. Mother-in-law keeps giving directions from a memory of this town a billion years ago when she was in college. Father-in-law takes her directions rather than the maps he made us Google. They relate to the wedding. Mother-in-law kept trying to keep the wedding license. They relate to the reception. Because mother-in-law wanted to buy sandals for the beach? $30 sandals? I thought we were saving money? And to top it all off, at R's reception, father-in-law cornered my husband and R, and in front of everyone, he interrogated them about how much data they have used. They are on an unlimited plan. Father-in-law was just grumpy the rest of the reception, so we've taken the day to hide in our hotel room and watch TV. Is this normal boomer behavior? I can't figure out if it's lead paint or dementia or narcissism or what. Edit, the web of who these freaking people are is so deep. They interfered with my husband's transition. He transitioned to male a few years ago and stopped our wedding because it was gay. These people are homophobes and racist on top of it all because we had to switch careers to help her. My husband refused to go no contact. My husband and I can't move out. My husband took a huge pay cut and we'd been offered to live in a rundown abandoned property they own close by for utilities. We ended up being charged an additional $800 for rent each month, and then in February of 2024, they decided we can't afford to live there and we were being kicked out and would have to live with them. We have to live with these people or be homeless. As soon as possible, we will be leaving to find our own place and never speak with these people again. Throughout this whole story, the one thing that stuck in my mind is exactly the last sentence OP wrote. As soon as possible, leave to find your own place and never speak with these people again. You just gotta get out of there. Anakite Nephilim commented, "At no point do you appear to have said no or refused to travel with them. Stick up for yourself." OP responded saying, "We insisted to travel to the wedding by ourselves, but they kept insisting. We should save money and travel together. And they manipulate my husband at all turns. I can't make him stick up for himself, and I can't stick up for him any more than I already have." Our next story is, mother owes me thousands of dollars and laughed in my face when I asked her to pay me back. I'm not sure how to approach this situation. My 22-year-old female mother fell victim to the trading/Forex lifestyle in 2016. She didn't get a job until earlier this year because I moved out and she wasn't able to use my paychecks anymore to pay their bills. From ages 14 to 21, she has pawned countless of my favorite items. Xbox, my KitchenAid mixer, etc. I was only told once I found out. In addition to this, she has taken all of the money that relatives sent to me for birthdays, Christmas, and graduation during those years. She was routinely siphoning my paychecks as well, setting up those quick app loans in my name. I received my first credit card at age 18. She ran up over the limit and didn't pay it back. I am still unable to apply for any credit card that isn't secured. Throughout all of this, she promised to pay me back. Of course, I believed her. It's my mom. After a while, I stopped keeping track of all of the money she's borrowed, but I know it totals $5,000 plus. We had an arrangement where I told her instead of paying me back, she could buy me a car, which she had been promising since I was 16. Last week, I told her I'd been looking at cars and she seemed enthusiastic, excited to help. Well, I called her yesterday to let her know I found a car and asked how she was going to contribute. She laughed in my face and told her she wasn't paying for anything. I said, okay, well, give me the thousands you owe me. She laughed again and told me she didn't have any. Earlier in the conversation, she told me she had $4,000 put away. I understood that she's finally catching up on all of their debt after trading, gambling, all of these years. But do I not deserve any form of compensation? I kept the secret debt from my dad all of this time, so he thinks I'm a lazy freeloader only child who just wants my parents to pay for everything, not knowing how I sacrificed my teenage years just to keep the house afloat. I'm finally raising my credit score and accumulating my own savings now, but I genuinely don't know how to move past this or approach the situation with my family. I was pretty much my mom's therapist during this time, which makes me feel more emotionally guilty for asking for the money back or telling my family the truth. I have no idea what to do. I don't even need the money, but I can't let go of the resentment I feel, especially when I see other parents doing and paying everything they can to support their child. OP posted an update at the top of the post saying, "Update, my boyfriend and I made plans with my dad for next weekend and plan to tell him then after gathering evidence. My credit is locked and I made a separate bank account ages ago. I'm not sure if it's possible to change my social security number, but I would like to." So, isn't it sad that a social security number is so vital for so much stuff? It was never even meant to be some form of identification. It's not like a secured thing. That said, I agree wholeheartedly with what BunnaWhat13 commented saying, "Tell your dad, why would you keep these kinds of secrets from him?" OP responded saying, "My dad has intense anger issues. So when I would bring up the idea of telling him, she would act as if she would be in danger if I told him, or tell me she wanted to end herself. I was a teenager, so I didn't know any better, but now that I'm older, I do. The problem is my dad has been so happy since she got a job, I'm scared to take that away from him. He's such a hardworking man and doesn't deserve it. He's super evangelical, so doesn't believe in divorce either." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy entitled parent story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.